This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Jambo Jambo, welcome in the Masai Mara of Kenya. We have a lone elephant bull grazing just softly with this rain coming over. Welcome aboard to your very own safari live from the African wilderness. Good afternoon, everyone. Jambo Jambo. Welcome to the Masai Mara of Kenya. We have a lone elephant bull grazing here. My name is Tim, and behind camera we have Big James. It's nice weather here. A bit of some rain droplets falling over us. It's about 28 degrees Celsius, about 82 degrees Fahrenheit. For those who are joining us live, please send us your questions and comments at #WildEarth on the YouTube comment section at FC. For young viewers, kids question at wildearth.tv. And please send us your question and comment also at WildEarth, www.wildearth.tv. So this elephant bull has been around here since we got back to camp. Sometimes they'll be by themselves, sometimes they'll be with other bachelors hanging around. But it's always nice when you see elephant bulls. You know that the elephant society around this area will be actually happy because the roles of these bulls actually are very important in the herds. As this elephant bull grows, the males pass from one kind of society to another, which are always very different. You know, they graduate from juvenile to adult male society, where they'll join the big, muscular and gigantic bulls who always lead them and show them how to fit into the male hierarchy. They also have to learn how to deal with masks, because bulls by the age of 25 and above, that is when they first come into mask. When these bulls come across the bigger bulls, they also have to know how to respect in their presence, and also they learn how to gain access to the females for reproduction. So within this periphery, you might find that there are other bulls not far, maybe in the forest, because they always eat grass, and sometimes they'll pick on barks on trees, and that is their sole role of the task, to help when they debark the trees. So such bull will associate with cow-calf groups randomly and will move between groups in search of estrus females, and those that are sexually receptive. So that is the reason why they move from one area to another. And once they find a suitable mate, they will test their urine and genitalia area using their trunk. Just like we saw about 2 days ago, there's a big bull that was in mask. He walked into a very big herd, and certain behavior which was very, very nice to see how he was walking through from one female to another. They can spend the entire day eating, about 16 hours a day, only taking short breaks to rest and also to sleep standing. It's a nice spot for him. I think that grass there is suitable for him, the red oat grass. So I'm going to take you over to another live location.
Good afternoon, fine people. You are all aboard our wonderful safari. Here on Djuma Game Reserve, it is rainy. Can you hear the rain? Can you hear my voice? Isn't it exciting to be able to speak? Hi everyone, it's me, Trishal, and I've got Theo on camera with me this afternoon at Djuma. And we are around Sandy Patch, which is in the western section of Djuma. And we're just having a look around because there were some rumors of a leopard. So far, we have not been able to spot our one-eyed friend. It was Hukumuri that was rumored to be in this area, but also remember it's really close to our western boundary. But so far I have not seen tracks exit. So we're going to keep an eye out here, and all the other guides are too. And look around for Hukumuri. It's 34 degrees Celsius, 93 degrees Fahrenheit, very humid, very hot. And the rain is welcome. Which is why we don't have a rain roof for the moment. But if we do have to go to camp to get one on, we will do that. I love the sound. Isn't it beautiful? Quite nice, big, heavy drops. All right, well, we're going to go about our mission, but there's also a whole lot of things I want to check out. I want to go to the hyena den. I want to check out that white-crested helmet shrike nest as well, so we can actually talk about it. That would be lovely. So let's go on our way.
I would totally agree with Shashada. Who does not like the sound of rain, especially when you can be cuddled in a bed and enjoying it, unlike right now where it's quite warm, but myself and David are enjoying it regardless. Good afternoon, my name is Carl. Behind camera is Big D. We're sitting over here and we're just enjoying the wonderful and spectacular display of the three-thorn, small to medium-sized shrub, and it's found fairly widely through the western sections of Tswalu, and it's very easy to recognize, getting to be between 1 and 2 meters in height, and at the moment it's very easy to recognize this small shrub because of these white-ish flowered trumpet-like flowers that are fully in display at the moment. And it just creates something extra for us to appreciate while on drive. So you can see they are mainly white. You also find them in a pinkish color. And then they've got tiny little wavy leaves starting from a cluster. And then they obviously laid in the branches themselves. So they don't give much color. And palatable to unpalatable. I find certain species will relish it more than others. But right now, a lot of insects are utilizing these flamboyant structures. A very important job that they're doing. So you can see the colors. If you look at flowers, a lot of flowers produce color. That'll be the attractive a notive for a pollinator to come and do its job. But with these flowers, you'll find that there won't be much color, but they'll be producing quite a lot of scent. And then the color will also be utilized under the cover of darkness, because lighter colors will reflect any bit of light generated from the moon and the stars. So things like moths, definitely a main attractive motive here would be attracted to these white structures. Really, really beautiful. So looking at even the shape of the flower could be a way in which this tree or shrub would attract a certain pollinator. And definitely insects doing the job here. It adds a little sprinkle of color to the green uniform landscape now. Definitely coming to that true terminology of the green Kalahari, with the beautiful rain that we've been receiving for the past few days. Hence the name three-thorn. So Dave, if I can show you over here. Hence the name three-thorn. So if you take a look at the end of the stem will end in a beautiful three-thorn appendage or formation. Right, we'll take a look at that a little bit later. We're going to send you off to another one of our amazing colleagues, and we'll see you in a bit.
Welcome back to the mother as lone bull is still feeding. You can see him grazing on the very lush greens there and slowly flapping over. I've seen sometimes in this time of the year where female elephant will come into estrus, and I've seen lots of mating around this time and also May. And that is also sometimes during the rain. You find not only the elephants in mask that mate, but also elephants that are not in mask. Rosalind, how loud is an elephant trumpet? I'm sure an elephant trumpet, sometime we can hear that up to about 3 or 4 kilometers away. Sometimes when there are no older bulls present around these areas, you find that the social hierarchy sometimes gets a little bit disrupted. And so young bulls like this will come into mask at a much earlier age. So bulls will be always in mask at the mid-20s, but you find that older bulls in the bachelors have the higher rank or hierarchy by coming into mask because they are older, and some of them are maybe 40s and mid-40s. So when those bulls are not present, you find that young bulls will come into mask at a very early age. And that sometimes can be a big problem, sometimes because the young bulls in mask tend to show very aggressive behavior on other large games, especially in places where you have rhinos, even buffaloes. And you find in places where our reserves, where there are no older bulls, so there have to be an introduction of older bulls to solve that kind of problem. I think 2 days ago someone asked me whether there be rogue elephants and angry elephants. So young bulls that have not gone through that mentorship by the big mature bulls can be rogue because they come into mask without having that social or mating etiquette passed through them from the older bulls. Manohara, do elephants sometimes eat meat because of deficiency? I've not seen elephants going for meat. So we find that if elephants have that kind of deficiency, so what happens, they will change the diet, they change whatever they eat from grass into favorable trees, leaves, and that's the reason why we have elephants being mixed feeders. They can browse and graze. So whenever they feel that there's a deficiency, the matriarchs, who are the role leaders and the key leaders of the herds or the members of a certain herd, they will take them to those suitable places where they have those very intelligent memory and maps, where they'll take them to forage for trees, leaves, and even barks. So, and that comes at a time when it's dry, there's no water, so they'll take them for minerals. They know where to dig for minerals thanks to their tusk and also their feet. So they'll go for minerals, they'll take them to forage in the forest. So that also comes and adds up nutrients into their diet. You can see him defecating. It's reckoned that elephants can defecate dung piling up to about 100 kilos a day. I think he's had enough for that area, so he's walking to a different spot. When do elephant bulls come together at mating? So elephant bulls will always be separate. They'll always be alone. So in that bachelor herd, there's always a hierarchy where the older bull, the older mature bull, has that dominance hierarchy. So sometimes these elephants walk into herds, they walk back into their natal herds, they walk into other herds where they'll always analyze the scent of the females, if some are in estrus. So always they come back together and then regroup. So not only that they come together after they've mated, but they can always regroup at any time. this time of the year when there's more water and grass, so the grass adds up a very big diet in these elephants because they're more nutritious. So this grass are more nutritious, adding up protein into their diet. So at this time of the year, you'll find them just grazing and grazing, only resolving into the forest and eating leaves and trees when it gets dry. It's a nice moment of silence watching this bull grazing. So I'm going to take you over to another live location.
Good afternoon and welcome to Anbion Pinder Private Game Reserve. As you can see, we've got a beautiful herd of zebra right in front of us, out in our open floodplain. My name is Kim, and behind the camera we have Craig, and we'll be with you this afternoon. It's actually a lovely hot afternoon. There's not too many clouds in the sky. It's quite hot. Now, normally in this open floodplain we see a huge amount of wildebeest and zebra, because as you can see we've got a lot of very green grass. It's a recently burnt area. One of the ways in which we control our bush encroachment is to burn certain sections of the reserve, but also it stimulates new growth, as you can see. So this is all very nutritious grass, and the reason why we have the zebra out in this open area. But I think from the heat of the day, most of the animals are still hiding in the thicker areas around them, surrounding this area, and as it cools down we'll probably see more and more of them come out into the open. In fact, as I'm looking at my binoculars, you can actually see quite a few wildebeest and zebra in the distance as well. The group of 3 zebra to the right, if you have a look at the one in the middle, you can see it's actually missing its tail. I'm sure some of our viewers have noticed that about zebra before. It's not that uncommon to find zebra without tails, and unfortunately it's their own doing. So zebras can be quite vicious towards each other, and struggling to see from this distance if it's a male or a female. But the females, the males will try and collect a group of females, a harem of females, maybe 5 or 6, but it does depend. They can have bigger harems or smaller harems. And what they do is another male will come along, a stallion, and he will decide he wants to take one of the females, and he'll have a fight with the male and try and take over that female. And as that female tries to leave, the original male might try and bite her tail to keep her to stay. So that's one of the ways. Or when the 2 males are fighting, they might bite each other's tails off. They've got incredibly strong teeth, and they can cut right through that tail, and that is how it tends to happen. So you can imagine it's not very comfortable for that poor zebra, because if you watch, I suppose most of their tails, the one on the left started flicking a little bit, but you'll often see zebra flicking their tails quite a lot, and it's one of the ways they keep flies away. Interestingly enough, if we look at their skin, they've got that beautiful pattern between black and white. And there's a huge amount of theories as to why they've got that skin pattern. And one of them is, as they run as a group, it's difficult for predators to figure out an individual. Another one is that the contrast between black and white creates little eddy currents, which sort of swirl the air around the skin, making them a little bit cooler during the day. And so one of the reasons you see them out in the heat of the day more often than other animals, well, that's the theory. But there was an interesting study that was just taken place where they actually looked at the effect it had on flies. And they compared the zebra coats of tame zebra next to horses. And they did a slow motion zoom cam following the flight patterns of these flies onto the skin of the zebras and the horses. And only about a quarter of the flies that landed on the zebras were successful. The rest sort of crash landed, didn't manage to land properly when compared to the horses. So they think it actually sort of affects the fly's vision a little bit. It makes it difficult for them to perceive depth and therefore crash land. So it's probably more a defense against flies. And then they actually made little coats for the horses to wear. And which was quite funny is when they had that same pattern of the zebra coats, the same effect happened to the flies. They also crash landed on the horses when they were wearing the coats. So it seems as if it's more likely a defense against flies. So hopefully that, probably warrants a little bit more further study, but might be the answer we've been looking for. And as you can see, zebras are often really affected by flies. Look at they shake their heads. It's because sometimes the flies actually crawl up those nostrils. So they can be really, really uncomfortable. What's quite interesting about this group is the second zebra from the left. Have a look at that coat. And it is absolutely stunning. It's really very, very white. And from this distance, I can only see faint shadow stripes, which is those lighter colored stripes in between the prominent black stripes. From a distance, it's one of the ways you can tell when this is a plain zebra, is they've got those little shadow stripes in between the prominent black stripes. Amazing how different each coat is. That one's very prominently white, got big gaps in between the black bits, very faint shadow stripes. So we're actually in this area looking for some cheetah. We so far haven't found any sign of them. I suspect that they're somewhere around here, maybe in the shade. So we're going to keep looking for them, and hopefully we'll find some sign of them soon. That is one of my favorite theories. There's so many theories about zebra stripes, and that one to me sounds most conclusive. So I was looking for hukumuri. I ended up finding Shidudu sitting so wonderfully in this tree. We were just driving through in Western Quarantine, not far from camp at all. She was perfectly poised in this beautiful marula. She's been hanging around in this area quite a bit. I feel quite special. I found it this morning and found it this afternoon. I think she shall be my spirit leopard for my stint. I think she's got the perfect idea for this kind of weather. Chill out and have a nap. She has such a love for trees, which just makes for beautiful images. And she can be quite playful at times. She loves to jump around. And the way this usually goes when I find her in a tree on this road is that she jumps down after about 20 minutes and then goes into the drainage. And then that's that. So it'd be nice to just enjoy her for a bit. Loving the sound of the rain at the moment. So consistent and peaceful. Look at that face. I'd love to see her take a bit of a walk around the tree, just for our pleasure. Travel Pete, you'd like to know if Karula is still in the area and alive? No, Karula has been missing since, I first thought it was end of 2016, but it was actually beginning of 2017 that she's been missing since, which basically means she's deceased. You'll hardly ever find the carcass of a leopard if a leopard has died, so it means that she's deceased. And she left behind Hosana and Shongile as her last litter, prematurely, before they were independent. She is not in the area and not alive. Now, Shidulu is not part of that lineage. Shidulu's mother was the Ingrid Dam female. I wish I could have met Karula, and I think that her lineage has such a distinct face. Yogesh, you'd like to know if a leopard loses her cubs, will she come into estrus within the next few weeks or 3 to 4 weeks? Oh, look at that. She will come into estrus very quickly after that, almost immediately. But remember, being in estrus doesn't mean that she's ovulating. She'll have to mate in order to induce that ovulation, and will only then be able to fall pregnant. Tandi is a great example of that. She is, when she lost the last litter, the one before her current male cub, it must have been just a few weeks before she had gone into estrus and fallen pregnant again. I think she's so stunning in this tree. It's the perfect leopard tree. She's even got like handles for her paws, front paws. The rain is falling. I always think the bush looks a little bit more greener when it's wet. This is just gorgeous. She's not the only special coated animal around here. She's been watching a much taller mammal. But this giraffe, it was like a string of scenes. She was watching the giraffe, and the giraffe was watching a lilac-breasted roller rolling in the sky. I love when you get to see different animals, different species interact with each other. Well, not really, not even interact, but just for them to be close by, like, you know, when there's elephants in the background and leopards in the foreground and stuff like that. I love that. But of course, I love even more when they interact. We're going to stick with, oh, look at that, with Shidulu and our giraffe, of course. Let's not forget our giraffe. And Shidulu and our giraffe for as long as we can. The rain is coming down, so either we'll go back to camp, get a rain roof, or hopefully it'll ease up. Either way, we'll spend as much time as we can with her before she drags us into the drainage.
Pond, where we always have about 6 hippos within this small pond. It's a new pond, or dam rather, that was constructed last year after the long rains. You can see how they're enjoying the waters. Initially there's one bull, but then about 5 females came to join him, which is very nice. So I'm sure we'll start a big family around here. Because of the long rains last year, you find that the Mara River went or burst its bank. So hippos rather will just walk out of the river because they are not strong swimmers. They can be swept downstream. So they walk out of the river to find suitable places where they'll be at least safe. So this became a very nice spot for them to come and rest. So they've taken refuge. They've become permanent residents of this dam.
So welcome back everyone, and we actually decided to stay with these zebra for a little bit, just see what they get up to and take in the scene a little bit. It's quite stunning. If you can see in the background, there's a whole lot of those very yellow trees. Those are fever trees, very dependent on water, so there's an actually little watering hole right behind them. That's why we're seeing those in the distance. Sure most of our viewers know this, but this is one of my favorite spots on Phinda, always because it reminds me of the Masai Mara, our very own little section of the Mara right here in KwaZulu-Natal. I'm just having a little giggle because we have been victims of these flies that we were talking about earlier. They keep coming and bugging us now. I think, they've been attracted into the area by these zebra, and now they've found some new victims. Beautiful. I see that one zebra off to the left they were talking about with the no tail. Actually a male zebra. Now one of the ways you can tell from a distance is by looking in between the bum cheeks. You You've got a good view of his bum now. You can see it's a very thin black line there. Very, very thin black line. And so that signifies he's a male. The females actually have a thicker black line there. So I always say that the females wear the granny pannies and the males wear the G-strings. Fun way to remember it. But there's quite a good reason behind that little patch of skin there. And, you know, there's that age-old question as to whether zebra are white with black stripes or black with white stripes. And they are, in fact, black with white stripes. And the reason we can say this is by looking at that little patch below the tail. And that's actually a patch of bare skin where there is no fur. Now, you'll see that is very common in a lot of antelope, especially in the females. You'll see, if you take note next time you look at any female antelope, as they move their tail, there's a patch of bare skin. And the reason that's there is when they give birth, they don't want the afterbirth to cling to the fur because it's a very difficult place for them to reach to clean. So it's actually in their benefit to have a whole section where there's no fur. And that way, when they give birth, very little blood actually gets onto their fur and they can remain clean that way. So you always see the females with a larger patch of bare skin below their tails. So with the females here, it's the same. They've got that larger patch of bare skin, and that's showing their skin underneath, which is actually black in color. So yeah, zebra are black with white stripes, in case any of our viewers were wondering. Now we were talking about the shadow stripes. If we have a look in between, and I said it's a way to tell if they're plain zebra. Sparse, in terms of the strength of their bite, I'm not entirely sure, like in compared to other animals. I remember reading a whole study and they compared hippos and hyenas and lions. I don't remember zebra coming up, so I don't think it's, you know, hugely significant compared to, you know, those kind of animals. It's not to the point where it's going to crack a bone or anything like that. As we've discussed, they can bite through other zebras' tails in one sort of nip. But I think it's the same as humans. You know, we don't realize how strong our biting power is. But if you think of carrots or something, we can certainly crunch through those. So I would imagine it's similar to a human's biting strength. You know, they don't really have a huge need for strong bites. Their main defense when they're attacked by predators or anything, they've got a really strong kick, and that will often be the way that they try and get away from a lion. I don't know if you've watched those videos before, where a zebra will sort of rear back and give a very prominent kick, and that can do a huge amount of damage if it lands on the right spot on a lion. So that's their main defense. Last resort is that they'll bite. So they don't have very strong teeth. They've only got, you know, the molars, no other types of teeth. And that's just because, as you can see, all they really need their teeth for is to feed on a little bit of grass. But thanks for your question. It's lovely sometimes to stop and listen. Got a lot of birds calling off to our left. Can't hear anything really in the open areas because all the birds have taken shelter in the little thicket behind us. You know, ones we would expect to see out in the open are more like our lapwings. We saw a black-bellied bustard just now. He seems to have flown off at the moment. You can hear a black-crowned shagra going. And a rattling testicula there as well. So I think what we'll do is we are going to go and have a look for those cheetah and see if we find any signs of them. I have a feeling, like I said earlier, that they're somewhere off to our left, somewhere in the shady spots of this thicket. Hopefully they haven't gone too far, and hopefully we will find them soon.
she has jumped down from the tree. Spectacular fashion as usual. True leopard fashion. Scraping insect barking at the base now. She and the giraffe were having a stare off. Giraffe's now staring at her still. Look at that. This never gets old. This scene never ever gets old. Seeing a leopard walk through the grass. Oh, anyway. Jacqueline, you'd like to know why are leopards loners? Did I get that right? I hope that I did. We're going to watch her walk away as we chat. Leopards are loners because when it comes to cats are all carnivores, right? So everybody's got to find a little niche that suits them. Well, they're quite big cats. Now we're going to have to move while I answer your question. They're quite big cats, right? But they don't want to compete with lions. And in order to not compete with lions, they've got to find their own niche. And their own niche, what worked for them is to be solitary. What worked for lions was to be social. So it was just a matter of what was best for their survival, what worked best for their survival. But the more time we spend here learning about leopards and getting to know them, let's go see if we can get the front of her. The more we realize that they do recognize their kin and they do socialize. They do sometimes come into contact with each other. Oh, now we've got a beautiful background of other guests behind you. Let me try and reposition. Oh, okay. Thank you so much. There we go. Don't do what you do, though. She's looking off into the drainage where I'm not going to be able to follow her. There she goes. Can you see how her tail is just slightly in the air? She's going to lower it now. She raised it as she came down. That's kind of a sign to any birds that are having, you can hear them again, any birds around. It's kind of like a white flag to say, yes, I know you can see me, but please don't give me away. All right, she's walked off, and we are not going to follow her into that drainage. Well, that was short and sweet, and I'm so glad that we got to spend it together.
From the leopard to the river horse, where hippos are very much enjoying. You can hear them puffing the water. Very nice. So the dam is not too deep. It has an even bottom, so the hippos are very much enjoying. Unlike in the river where you have the riverbed, or the bottom is sometimes uneven, where you find some hippos coming to one spot just for space. And also, hippos utilize the best spots along the rivers along the shores of the lake, where at least it's suitable for them to rest with ease. But here you can see the hippos enjoying. There's no fight at all, because you find in times of drought there's always disputes. That's the big bull there. You can see the dark patch on the dam wall, and that's where he was marking, spraying his dung there. So the only hippos that dung splatter are the bulls. So females and calves don't dung splatter. That is because the dominant bulls are the ones that mark their territory. So along the wall and along here, we have the path where they normally use, coming back into this wall dam in the morning and walking out in the evening. They're super active right now because it's almost time for them to walk out. We always see them walking out of this dam at around 7ish. So they're super excited. So by defecating in the water, hippos inject important quantities of energy and nutrients into the aquatic food chains. Dear watcher, can baby hippos walk much after birth? Not really much, because pregnant hippos, when they're just about to give birth, they'll walk out of the water, be it a lake, be it a river and dam like this, and go into a place where they will give birth, stay there for around a week, and then later on come back into the water where they introduce the calves to the rest of the pod. So they are not as active that much. Oh, there's a bit of a fight there. Give me space. So yes, they don't walk that much when they are young. So always the mother hippo will be around the calf or near the waters when the hippos are young. In this habitat where we are, because we have the Mara River, we have these ponds, so the natural enemies are crocodiles. But here, we don't have a singular or particular crocodile around here. So these hippo are much more at ease. They're very comfortable. So if the females give birth, then the young ones will be happy, because that is always a threat when there's crocodiles around. You can see the oxpeckers coming to groom them, pick on some ticks and some flies that run up and about. That oxpecker is having much fun. So hippos have to spend the days submerged in the water, because on land they can overheat and dehydrate. So they suffer from sunburn, which cracks their skin, and that's the reason you can see oxpeckers running from one hippo to another, because when the skins crack, so they have those oxpeckers come and nibble on that flesh or the wound there. So sometimes it can be irritating to these hippos. So normally they can stay under the water for about 6 minutes and can either swim or walk along the bottom. The water is deep enough so they can adjust their buoyancy by inhaling and exhaling. So that's the reason why you can hear them puffing. So that is how they balance their buoyancy in these waters. There's some people who've come to join us. They've come to watch these hippos, and you can see they've all turned direction and watching over the tourist vehicle who've come to watch the hippos puffing. Nandi, how long can hippos dive underwater? So it's normally between 5 to 6 minutes, but because this dam is not too deep, so at least they have that sequence where they just pop up for air within 1 to 2 minutes. But you find that in places where the water is too deep, they can at least submerge for about 6 minutes. Although they are known also to hold their breath for up to about 45 minutes in the very deep waters. But here we always see them popping up and holding breath for about 3 to 4 minutes. It's interesting how they stay submerged and then all of a sudden they all pop up for air. Oh, that's a big yawn. Wow, beautiful. Amali, do male hippos attack the baby hippos just like the lions do? Yes, male hippos can do that. They'll attack the baby hippos, and that will always trigger the females to come into season, into estrus. So that is the sole reason of them attacking the young ones. If in case there's a young male hippo here, he has no mating right. Only the dominant male hippo within a pod has the rights to mate with the females within a pod. So I'm still going to hang around with these hippos as I take you over to another live location.
We are out on quarantine. Shudulu has gone into the drainage. Now we're just watching some lovely little lambs. And some big impalas. Looks like they don't know that there's a leopard prowling around just yet. The lambs are such easy pickings. But it certainly isn't as good a meal as a ram. It's also really easy to hoist. Lots of conveniences with a lamb. I really enjoy coming out here on quarantine when the sky is really beautiful. At the moment it's a little bit stormy, but there's a bit of sun peeking out, so the light is a bit pink. Well, the clouds are a bit pink. And because of quarantine being on a crest, we're kind of on the same level, so you get a nice shot of the sky behind these animals. It's especially gorgeous at sunset and sunrise.
Welcome back to Tswalu Kalahari. We are appreciating the sky, we're appreciating the vegetation, and we're appreciating the mountains this afternoon. Davy was just trying to capture. We have a lot of little white butterflies called brown-veined whites that are actually migrating. They do an annual route that goes northwest. And I was just busy chatting to David, and I looked up. And just to explain to you, there's a constant streak across the sky of these tiny little white butterflies. And they are small, but there is lots of them. And obviously, if you look at butterflies and their distribution, they are tied to a certain vegetation. Obviously, for their larval stage, that is very important for these larval butterflies to have a certain food type. Okay, we can't see them. We gave it a bash. But just for you folks to really appreciate the landscape now. So Tswalu's gone out of its winter or dry seasoned dress, and it is now almost in full summer dress. And you can see the landscape has this touch of green which just dominates the area. And really nice for some of our long viewers that have been here since winter to really appreciate this transition or contrast of suit, let's say. So hence the name Green Kalahari. We are traveling south. We are heading to a pan that's full of water. I'm going to go see what's around there, and then we're going to travel a bit further southwest. We're going to focus on all the small things today. Like I said from this morning, I'd like to find some nice insects, because insects are going to be very active through this period. So while we're scratching around, we will be looking for other animals, other tracks and signs. Might it be the tracks left behind, or scratchings, or scrapings, carcasses. We're going to look for some birds. And this area is really productive at the moment, but also very beautiful. You can see on the mountains how the green is just giving a slight tinge, almost like this luminescent green to my eyes. You can see how the vegetation dominates the foothills of these beautiful undulating mountains. The wind's picked up a bit, pushing those butterflies a bit quicker. obviously having a little bit of a tailwind. They don't have to exert so much energy to move from point A to point B, which they are doing now. I'm going to send you off to one of our colleagues, and we will see you shortly.
Welcome back. Oh, you just came back in time to see that poor little zebra foal lie down. We were driving along trying to find his cheetah. Oh, look at that. You see its little yawn. In this caught our eye. We actually saw this young little foal lying down. And I think it is actually, the more I'm watching it, the more I think it's incredibly young. I didn't think it was as young in the beginning, but now that I see that it sort of got up and struggled to walk a little bit, I'm wondering on its age. Now, it doesn't seem like it's brand new, because if you look at the fur, it seems quite clean and fluffy, not wet at all, not as if it's just been cleaned. The mother shows no sign of recent blood or anything, but I'm wondering if it's actually just a few days old. And they can already walk within the first 11 minutes or so, but it certainly doesn't seem to be very stable on its feet. And as you can see, it's still got a really nice light brown color to it, which will darken. And of course, the most prominent thing is that it's very, very fluffy. I think perhaps the heat is a little bit too much for this foal this afternoon. It's exhausted it a little bit. Perhaps it also spent a lot of energy playing around and has now decided it needs a bit of a lie down. It's lovely to see is that protection of the mother. She can see that her main focus actually just to stay right next to her foal and sort of protect a little bit, rather than carrying on feeding or meeting up with the rest of the harem. Beautiful little scene. I'm hoping it gets up just now and we can get a bit of it. Nambi zebras can get up to 20 years old in the wild and quite a bit more in captivity. I think it's up to even like 40 years in captivity or something. But they only average about 9 years. So you can imagine, the older they get, the poorer their condition, and the more likely they are preyed upon by some sort of predator, lion or leopard or something. Generally lion, they are quite big animals, and like we were saying earlier, they've got a powerful kick. So you would have to take a really large, probably male leopard to take down something like a zebra. But thank you very much for your question. So sweet. You can actually just see the rise and fall of that little zebra as it's breathing. I hope it's okay. I think, like I said, it's just a bit of heat exhaustion. Probably the combination of it maybe overexerting itself a little bit earlier. You've got a Senegal lapwing coming in on the left. You see there's a bird with a very yellow eye and a white, sort of white under the belly. One of the common birds that you get out in the open areas here. And you can actually see another one off to the right that's standing on the termite ground. Pure legends, they don't have life partners. What will happen is a male will sort of fight for a group of females. He'll take over females one by one. They average about harems of 5 to 6. So one male will protect 5 or 6 females, but it can vary. I mean, I've seen massive harems, and that's just, a very dominant stallion. And he will protect those females for as long as he can, but eventually he's going to be outcompeted by another male who's taken a fancy to one of his females. They'll then fight, and that male will take over one of the females. So they will have multiple partners throughout their life, but for a period of time, they will only have one male that they mate with, and that will be the stallion of the harem. So it's possible because, this little foal is very young. We have a look around carefully at the group of zebra around. We might manage to see one male within a group of females, and then the most likely odd is that would actually be the father of this foal. Shame, I almost wish that this female would just stand a little bit back and maybe use her shadow to cast a little bit of shade over her foal. But I suppose if I'm looking, there's a bit of a shadow sort of right down the belly, so I think that is what she's doing, giving it a little bit of shade. Also perhaps the wagging of her tail, and you can see the foal's tail is wagging as well, definitely getting bugged by flies, maybe creating a nice little breeze. It's actually quite interesting. If you look at her belly, it does also seem to be a little bit round. Spicy purple, yeah, it would be a very similar sort of way that they would attack predators, just like the donkeys you're talking about. It would also, the main defense would be a kick. So you can imagine they would actually, if they rock back, they sort of almost jump. They plant their front feet and they push back with their back ones and do this really sort of hard kick. And that's how they often deter predators. That, and they can also bite if worse comes to worse. But very similar to donkeys, as you say, their main defense would be a kick. They've also got quite an interesting defense that protects them from predators. Now, if we have a look at this female, her coat, you can see all her lines, or all those stripes, are perfectly aligned. There's no sort of jagged edge. But sometimes what you'll see is a break in those lines, almost as if someone's pulled the skin apart and then sewn it back together perfectly, but just not quite aligned. And that's because they've got very loose sort of skin. So if something were to jump onto the back of this female, like a lion, if it were to get a good enough grip on the skin with its claw, the skin would actually just peel off. It would rip off. And that way, the lion would really struggle to actually keep a good hold, because the skin would just rip off in its claw and it would fall off of the zebra. And that's a way that they adapted, to actually, rather than the lion getting a really good grip on their back, the lion rather fall off, and then their skin mends itself really well. We've actually had a zebra on the reserve that almost had its intestines falling out because there was so much skin that was ripped off. And within a few weeks we saw the same zebra completely, all the stripes are misaligned, but it completely healed itself. So it's quite an interesting adaptation that they have. Another interesting adaptation, if we have a look right by those inside of the legs there, you can see a little black pad. See that round black pad there? And you can imagine they've got those quite sharp hooves. And when they lie down, they tuck those hooves under their bodies. And exactly where that black pad is where the hoof will come into contact with the skin. So that's sort of a protection from that sharp edge of that hoof. It's to protect their skin from getting cut from those hooves. So quite another interesting adaptation. In fact, the more you look at zebra, the more you realize that they are incredibly well adapted to this environment. Shame, it seems if I'm looking at her back left leg, she might have all done something to hurt it, or perhaps it's just giving it a bit of a rest. You can see it's held at a bit of a different angle. She's taken the weight off of it completely. So I wonder if something has happened to that leg. You know, it doesn't always have to be an attack from a predator. It can also, just like us, be put in sort of a dried crevice, maybe a dried animal track or something, and just the way the pressure's put on the leg or something can twist an ankle, hurt a bone. You know, we can come by injuries just like we can. She might have just hurt that muscle a little bit. Really hoping that this foal gets up soon and just, you know, hopefully goes over to a little bit of shade, because I think it is quite tired. But there's nothing that seems too concerning about its behavior. You know, it's breathing the whole time we can see its tail flicking, so I think it's gonna be fine. You can see that Senegal laughing really nicely in the front there. Deer watcher, they can fight to the death, but it's very unlikely. You know, it's animals actually are quite instinctive about not fighting to the death. It's often an incredible last resort, and very, very rarely will it occur. You know, they'll often try and out-intimidate each other, because they know that if they engage in a fight that is that serious, there's a 50-50 chance that they themselves won't make it through. So they'll rather give up and sort of try and find other females and just carry on, because there's not so much at stake that they need to sort of give up their entire life. And so I'm sure there's been cases where, you know, males have gotten carried away, or one male's, you know, dealt a particularly heavy blow in the right spot and it's caused irreversible sort of damage, but I think it will happen very, very seldom. Wonderful, the foals. It's literally starting to cool down around us. I think what we'll do is we're going to carry on. There's a drainage line just up ahead. We've been looking for these cheetah, but so far no sign. We found some tracks that were about a day old heading in that direction. So we're going to check around there, and I'm hoping that they're lying somewhere out in the shade.
We are at the white-crested helmet shrike nest. And we can chat about it. How cool is this? So we found it yesterday. Look at them going crazy. They're waiting for Mum. They're actually not waiting for Mum. Now that we have the opportunity to talk about it. White-crested helmet shrikes are cooperative breeders. So any one of the flock will come over and feed them and kind of watch over them. They even make that nest, that cup-like nest together. So everyone in the flock is invested in the survival of these little ones. Look at that begging. We are so, so tiny. According to the bird app, when they start to have a white collar around their necks, obviously, that's when they're about 10 to 15 days. I see a whitish collar. White collar and brown upper parts. Oh, they're getting quite excitable now. But I don't see any of the adults around. Oh no, That branch seems to hit them all the time. So sweet. That nest is something I really, really like because they use spider webs to hold the whole structure together. Spider webs, bits of bark from combretums. They tend to also put their nests in combretums like this one. They're in a red bush willow, Combretum apiculatum. So they would probably have used some of the bark, some leaves, some twigs, and held it all together with spider web. They would also line it with some of that silk as well as leaves and bark. Bit of bedding for the young ones. A chin-spot batis came down and sat next to them and looked almost as if it thought that it was theirs. And then almost looked like it was going to feed them and then flew away. I thought that was quite interesting. Now, the last time when I was here, I counted 5. I think we can only see 4 at the moment. The 4th one is just that kind of downy bits that are blowing in the wind. So I see 2 on the far sides, the right and the left, and then that are not easy to recognize, and then 2 in the middle. But I suppose there's 1 on the other side because I'm sure I counted 5 yesterday. Oh, there we go again. Crazy, crazy, I'm hungry. Here they come. Here they come. I see an adult little worm. There she comes. There she comes. A cricket. Whoa, that's so big for you. Wow. Wow. Oh no, that's really caused a stir in the nest. So because they're cooperative breeders, often the siblings of the pair that is mating or has mated, often the siblings will go out, forage and feed these little ones. I think that's so sweet. David, you'd like to know how many of these chicks I think will fledge. If they are 5, which I think that they are, I think 1 or 2 may perish. But they're cooperative breeders, which means that strategy has worked well for them. So lots of adults within their flock are invested in their survival. So what would happen is you'd have a breeding pair, and they would come, so males from one flock will find females from another flock. Oh, again. Can you hear that picking? And then those two male and female components of the flocks come together and create their own. And then a pair will breed. And the siblings will stay within the flock until they're mature, and then they will help raise these little ones, and then they will break away from the flock and go off and breed on their own. So once the siblings within the flock will not breed. So it's only when they leave that they have that ability. This is just too sweet. There's a battalier shouting like a chicken in the background. I wonder if you can hear it. There we go. I wonder if it's the same bird that's coming back and feeding them all the time, or it's a different one, as in what we've just seen. Because there were a number of them around when they arrived. I think they're going to pay these guys a regular visit. So awesome to watch things develop and grow. It's one of the privileges we have here. One of many privileges when it comes to flora and fauna. I think they're just utterly adorable. Completely and utterly. Look at that. You can all barely fit in that cup. Too sweet. Alright, well, we have checked out the den and the cubs are out, but the adults are not. So we are going to move on and just have a bit of a bumble and see what we spot. I'd love to see some elephants today.
Welcome back to Tswalu, and what a beautiful scene we have here. Changing things up from the hustle and bustle of moving from point A to point B on a vehicle. This is a giant ground or saw-eye lily, and something that is out in full force at the moment, and very easy to recognize with these very large strap-like leaves. I mean, look at that. A lot of moisture contained within these leaves, but making it very easy to recognize. I mean, look how broad that's about 8 centimeters in width and very, very long. And if you don't want to use that, you can use these beautiful items right over here. And that is just amazing. So a lot of butterflies visiting these beautiful flowers at this point in time. And there's a lot of flowers on there. It could be up to 50 different flowers on this single stem. So it just shows you how important it is for this plant to spread its seeds. So this gives it a higher chance to be successful, obviously being pollinated by insects, and then also then for seed dispersal. And if David just pulls you to the left-hand side, you're going to see how many of these plants there are. These are geophytes. So the term geophyte, this is a bulb that actually sits under the ground, and bulbs and extensive roots are an efficient tool by plants here in the arid western regions of southern Africa, and as well as around the world. They basically can store nutrients and water to push through the unfavorable periods until the approaching rains touch the very, very dry and thirsty landscape. And this is when they would flower, is now in the summer period. They typically flower mid to late summer, but obviously with the early rains that we've received here so far, these geophytes are taking full advantage of them. So I said they've got a bulb. Obviously that's the term geophyte. This bulb is actually possesses quite a few alkaloids. Alkaloids are a few toxins that obviously deter animals from feeding on the nourishing body under the ground, which can also be a little bit dangerous to us, especially if you don't know which ones are edible and which are not. You've got to think about these storage compartments would have been heavily utilized by the early inhabitants, the San people, obviously for an invaluable source of water and nutrients. But I mean, they would have used these bulbs. They put like a few scales that actually encase the bulb itself. And these would have been used for various properties. Some of these geophyte bulbs are used to dress wounds. Some of them are used to deter insects. Some of them are edible. Some of them are highly toxic. So it's always very important to know which ones are and which ones aren't. But that is just incredible. So looking at the structure of this flower, having multiple flowers obviously ensures that you have a maximum chance of spreading your seeds. But those little pieces above my little tiny stick there, that's where the business is happening. So you can see they're lightly yellow or like off-white color, and that's the presence of pollen. And you want the pollen to go from here down into one of these flowers over here. So this top part over here, this is called the anther. This is the male reproductive part of the flower, and you want pollen to be obtained from this little beautiful item and then to be taken into the central part of the flower where the female part would be presented. Obviously different flowers, different reproductive strategies. Some of them basically trick insects into the flowering body itself, and you cannot get out there unless you have performed a special duty, obviously pollinating this wonderful flower. And some of them just give it up easily. So after a couple of days, these will change into seeds. These bulbous round seeds about yay big. Oh, so let me put my finger about yay big. And obviously seed dispersal will happen from there. Find tortoises eating a lot of these leaves. Obviously the high moisture content within them at this point in time. But really remarkable flower out and about. And we'll take a look over the next couple of days. A lot of geophytes are flowering, and so we'll take a look at the diversification of these flowers across the landscape of Tswalu. But the beautiful color and also the unique structure, you can see that you need to have the tools necessary to get inside there to get the nectar. So pollen will be rubbed off onto the animal's body, and then you'd have to scratch through or get into a tiny little section of the flower to take the pollen onto the female organ. Obviously that's what the flower wants, and you can see this tubular-like structure. You have to really get in there. And even the color is showing the insect, so you can see how it goes from quite light pink color to very dark reddish section in the middle. And obviously if you look at insects, obviously they see in a different spectrum. They don't see color like we see color. So this, to our very short range of color vision, we see this as pink and, pink, dark pink, as when an insect might see this as purple or yellow even. So it's actually indicating to the insect where you should go. I mean, look at that, me just touching the anther there. Look at my finger in the pollen, look at that. That is a tremendous amount of pollen. Obviously ensuring that you are going to have maximum effect when pollen goes from this flower to another. Flowers can be hermaphrodites, male and female reproductive organs on one plant. You find that in other organisms like fish. Lara, Mora, these flowers, especially these leaves, could be used by smaller animals like rodents and tortoises. I've never seen something resting under here. You could have insects, beetles, there goes a little stink bug. Tortoises resting under here, rodents seeking shelter and refuge. I mean, the the shade that these broad leaves are providing is quite amazing, and I can feel a huge temperature difference from above to that of below these broad strap-like leaves. So, I'm sure little rodents would definitely seek shelter here. Tortoises throughout the day. Tortoises will be utilizing this quite a lot. I don't like damaging and altering, but I just want to show you folks something, just one leaf. If I break this leaf, you would see that these leaves are utilized by a lot of animals now. If I just bend this leaf, watch how much moisture comes out of that leaf. Look at that. That is incredible. So for a very thirsty animal like a tortoise or a small rodent, that is a lot of moisture, provided from one plant itself. Sure, look at that. Amazing. And with the tortoise eating on this plant, you would be able to see it because of its serrated mouth structure. There'll be like chunks, but very, very sharp angles being produced from the cutting mouth parts of this little animal. But really amazing. So there'll be a bulb. So if you look right underneath, if I move these leaves, that goes down to a central stem, and then it's not too deep, maybe about a half a meter under the ground. We'll have this bulbous, almost like potato-looking like structure. It could also resemble that of an onion. There'll be scales on it, obviously, to protect it. And this is one that's done its job already. Look at that. Look at the difference. So once the flowers have done the job, that's the structure that's left behind. So you can see all the dead flowers over here. Really amazing structure. And just the vast amount of them just mind boggles me. Bernie, do the squirrels ever dig up the bulbs? Squirrels, maybe. Porcupines, definitely. Porcupines have a very hardy stomach, from what I know, and they are able to consume these large bulbous structures underneath here. So we've got another plant called the Bushman poison bulb, which is very toxic, and I've seen porcupine relishing on those bulbous structures underground. So with these bulbs, they hold certain toxins. Look at the little wasp here. Oh, man. Oh, it's flown now. So with these, there it is. Look at that. Tiny little wasp. And even a little individual like this could be playing a massive role on flowers such as these over here. We have certain trees that occur in the mountains called Namakwa rock figs. And if you look at fig trees, they are interwoven with little wasps called fig wasps, which actually do all of their pollinating for the tree. I mean, that is minute for a wasp. That still has a stinger, it still will sting you. You've got a good view there, Dave?
Yeah.
Tiny.
Closer if you can.
There we go, Dave's asked me to move a bit closer. Well, and there he's gone. All these little things out at the moment.
Just put it right to the lens.
Oh, getting up close and personal. Okay. Tiny little wasp. So obviously even he could be playing a very important role into pollinating plants out here. But yeah, so porcupine, very hardy stomach, and that is one animal I know of that is able to utilize bulbs and underground rootstocks, which obviously possess toxins to deter animals from feeding with them, because it's a very expensive part of a plant, and you can't just have animals feeding on it. So you have to have certain compounds or alkaloids to deter these animals from feeding on that vital part of this beautiful plant. I mean, look at even the shape for me. Patterns of nature just mind boggle me. It's what I see. A lot of things in nature. Look at that there. Sure, it's beautiful. See, here's these wasps back again. There's two of them now. I think must be my cologne. It's quite a fuzzy little thing. Okay, we're going to observe this little guy for now. We're going to send you off to one of our colleagues, and we'll see you a little bit later.
Welcome back to the Mara. We've come across a very small elephant herd, and you can see there's 3 bulls. There's about 4 bulls rather, but one is actually big. You see this big bull, and the elephant facing us, that's a young female. She's being courted by this big bull. They mated. We're just waiting for the second mate, and it's always nice when you see elephant in such a behavior. So this big bull here is actually what we were talking about earlier when it talked about mating, etiquette, and hierarchy. So we have about 3 young bulls who are accompanying this big bull. And because of respect in the battle herd, they have to respect the big bull. You can see he's not in mask. Not only that, elephant in mask are able to mate. So he's been courting her around, walking with her around, and at least the other young bulls will understand and actually have to pay him respect by keeping a distance. So the reason these bulls walk from families to families, from herds to herds, is just because they will go walk into those herds and analyze if those females might be in estrus. And that is what has happened today. He's come across this female that is in estrus. We just saw how he was running after her, chasing her around, and then mounted her. It's a very beautiful light. You can see this, the golden hour, the sun sinking into the sun with the clouds. You can watch these elephants in a very nice, beautiful color. That cow looks like they're all in water and spraying water on his body. You can see his face is actually wet, and the back. There's lots of buffaloes in the background. They're resting. These are good time that they always wake up and start grazing, heading back to water where they'll be drinking. They always drink about twice a day, early in the morning or mid-morning and late afternoon. Bush Pete, why are they flapping their ears? The reason why the elephants flap their ears is to fan, so making cold air that is being trapped between the body and the ears. They have blood vessels behind their ears, and because they run blood into the elephant's body, so the ear consists of about 20% of the entire elephant size. So those blood vessels, when the cold air gets trapped between the ears and the body, really cools down the blood. So it's just, they act like radiators where they help cool the engine. So that the sole purpose of what's happening here. Really, how far is this from the river? We're about 4 kilometers away from the river. So it's quite a distance from where we are. But you can see the forest line there. So there's no access actually on the forest edge. We have to go further upstream, where at least there's an opening where we can access the river. So I'll say it's about 4 kilometers away. In comparison to the two, you can see how big that bull is to that young female. So I would say it's a first time to come into estrus, so I'll put him around 8 to 10 years old. By looking just at the size difference in comparison to other females within the herd, so I just put her to be about 8 to 10 years. Safari lover with an elephant male mate with a family member. Sometimes that can happen if in case they always come back to the family or natal herds if there are no larger bulls within that area. So the presence of mature bulls in this ecosystem really matters, and it's always important to have them around. So if females come into a season where the big mature elephants are not present, then that will just automatically happen that they'll have to mate with a family member. But often at times, these elephants, because they always disperse or walk out from their herds when they get to teenagehood, when they get to come off, so they always walk with big mature bulls like this. So there's always a hierarchy where mating etiquette has to be followed. So often we find that it's not really happening where family members will come to contact, family members will come to mate again. But yes, it can happen, but because of the distribution and population and how they walk from one area to another, so it's always not easy to find elephants mating with the same members of the family. Roger, thank you so much for your question. Do elephants have bones in their ears? So the function of the ears, actually you can see how well that is adapted. So they have very thick outer margin that you might think that those are really bones, but the thick cartilage on the skin edge acts like bones. So they have very thick cartilage on the ears, not really bones. So this is the mother to the young female that is being courted. Like we were talking earlier, elephants will always come back to their natal herds, especially the bulls. So this young cow has come into season. I'm assuming it's her first time to come into season. So it's an advantage because there is no inbreeding when teenagers disperse from the natal herds. So this bull, of course, has come from a different family, and that is an advantage because it is really helpful to avoid that inbreeding. You can see his sheer size. Most females will prefer such big bulls. His size really matters. Also age really matters. So females will prefer large or big mature bulls like him in comparison to younger bulls. He's slowly heading back, approaching that young female. Sometimes they always walk away or run, so the bulls have to keep on following them. She's following her mother, and the young calf is also coming to join in. Didn't get the name quite clearly, but with the bull's heart, the matriarch, sometimes the matriarchs will come in defense for members of the family when a bull walks into the herd. So sometimes there can be a confrontation, and because they have tasks, this task can inflict injuries and big wounds on those elephants. So not often that I've seen that happening, but yes, it can come to happen if there is a bit of a tussle between the two. So this bull is going to keep an eye, is going to court this female for several days, because estrus elephants go about to sometimes even 4 or 5 weeks, but then ovulation lasts for about 4 days. So it's going to be together for a little while. see a young bull from the bachelor herd approaching that young cow, and you can see the big older bull is going in his hard defense, wants to keep him off. Very interesting behavior. So that is what we're talking about, mating etiquette. So you're not allowed to mate when these older bulls are present here. So that young bull will also learn from observing, and of course, hierarchy determines who's going to mate. So in close association, the mating etiquette has to apply. And so in future, when that younger bull becomes dominant and has hierarchy in a bachelor herd, he'll do the same. So I'm just going to back up a little bit for another view. So the communication that went through is keep off. You can see that younger bull has just walked a few meters from this old bull. And in case a bigger bull to him will come, he'll also do the same. He'll respect and move off. And if he feels that he has the mating right, then they will also come into a fight. So dominance and hierarchy comes from bulls fighting. And sometimes that is the reason why we come across bulls with broken tusks. So they might have come into a fight for dominance. It's not easy to be a dominant bull. So you have to go all through those rite of passage, fighting, and also being submissive to these older bulls. And when your time comes, you'll also have to fight for your chance to mate with these females. He's slowly approaching and then sniffing her genitalia. think it's still going to take a little bit of time before they mate again. So we're going to just keep an African bush. Do elephants have specific breeding season? I would say I've seen that happen during May in places where we have adequate rain and also food. So the availability of food is also what determines what time elephant will come into season. So I've seen just after the rains, you see that elephants will come into season. Seems like they're walking away from us. I'm going to change position again. That's the young female. You can see how she's following the mom and the brother because they never leave the natal herd. So that young elephant will also never leave this herd. So that the female actually never walk away from their matriarchs because they learn from observing. They're being taught by their mothers and also the big matriarchs. So it's also very important when they hang around these matriarchs. Seems like we're going to give way and keep on following these elephants. I can see the young bull trying his luck, but with the big bull's presence, I'm sure he's not going to win. He's not yet learned, and I'm sure he's just joined the bachelorhood. So he has a long way to learn from this old bull. It's always very interesting observing such a behavior. I'm still going to hang around these elephants as I take you over to another live location.
Well, we've managed to find some tall horses. Nice group of what looks like a male giraffe out here, so a little bachelor herd. And then just having somebody to associate oneself with out here. A bit of socialization is very important. But yeah, it looks like a group of males. You see the one just going out of view. Now, if you look slightly to the left-hand side of the one walking through the beautiful canopy, that's another dark and very mature bull at the background. Busy getting a late afternoon feed. Obviously, these trees, previously known as acacia, now they are now known as Vichilia, play a vital role. See the calf there, the young one, David, just to the left there, play a vital role when it comes to nourishment for a lot of species out here. You can see even that small one is a male from his very straight and very thick ossicones. Oh, and so green. You can even see the shape and structure of the head allows a giraffe to get in between all these very tricky bits of the tree. Beautiful light coming through there on the mane and through the bushes, through the leaves itself. But a beautiful scene that we've got going on here at the moment.
We are here at Chitwa Dam, and the elephants are having the time of their lives. I was so hoping to see elephants today. And they're splashing about, having a swim, having a drink. There's some little ones in there too. I'm just enjoying the sounds and sights. I want you to as well. Isn't that sound just magnificent? If it weren't for the hippos, the crocs, and the dung balls floating all over the water, it would be going to say it would be very enticing apart from those things. They're talking and communicating. Do you hear those rumbles? magnificent. Something's caught their attention. It's picking up their trunks to have a good whiff of the air. And there's also a lone impala. Looks a little bit confused. I wonder if it's another predator. Really one.
Yeah, get on it. Well, sorry about that, folks. We are busy enjoying these giraffe. We just changed position so we can have a better view of them. This is a very beautiful scene, and there's a lot of wattled starlings in front of us. They've just flown up into the tree. And we're just waiting for them to come back down. But this is definitely a group of male giraffe here, a bachelor herd. So it's important to have a sparring partner in a herd like this, especially if you're male, so you can practice all that you need to through your younger years before you eventually have to fight for mating rights. And a giraffe might look flamboyant at doing it. It's a very awkward, very unique style of fighting your opponent, but it can sometimes be very, very vicious. Even giraffe dying sometimes from very, very high impact blows. But now everybody is relaxed. Where do you have the springbok? Ah, there you are. Beautiful springbok. David's put into view for us. David, you sure those aren't impala? But how beautiful is the scene in between the springbok, and you can see the thick trunks of that tree absolutely covered with leaves. Are you on that one, Dave? The one with the springbok are? Yeah, wow. And everybody being drawn to this area from the nice lush grass that's found within this section. Just come through the pan as well, nothing much happening there. Where are these starlings? Making a noise in front of us. Yo, the wildebeest running. It really doesn't look like the Kalahari. Oh, they're busy running. Are you on the springbok, Dave? Yep. Beautiful. Look at that. What a scene. It just moved off fairly quickly there. Might have been a little disturbance. Obviously not a massive threat. You can see the distance that they've moved from isn't great. So something spooked one, and if one runs, they all run. So this will be a little harem over here. One male, quite a lot of ladies. And through certain periods they can form very large herds. Especially other individuals from the gazelle family found in East Africa. Really beautiful animals. See the male busy moving around, sniffing. Look at his tail is erect. Bit of courtship behavior going on there. Yeah, the scene just doesn't look like we saw Tswalu 2 months ago. This area would have been barren, almost bare soil. And now you have this dominant ground cover. And this ground cover is very important to minimize on water loss, especially from the harsh Kalahari sun that we're starting to really push into the hotter times of summer. And this ground cover is very important to minimize on evaporation, especially the water that's sitting in between the grains of soil. And it just doesn't look like I'm on Tswalu at the moment. It feels like I'm in East Africa. I'm on a see Isaac or Tim rocking around the corner. So these males in this herd of giraffes still have a little way to go. They all look fairly young to eventually when they would need to fight for mating rights, but until then they'll stay in these loose aggressions, kind of have a bit of competition and a bit of company. One paying extremely high attention to us. Curiosity. Are very curious by nature. I've laughed a lot on safari because of giraffe. Yeah, but watching these springbuck over here, it's a very nice area. It's semi-open. So if there's any predators that are to come into this area, hopefully they'll be drawn into the activity of these primary consumers. And then we would be in the perfect spot for some high-powered action. Obviously, you have to be quick enough and skillful enough to catch a springbuck, because a springbuck is extremely agile and fast. I mean, a little antelope clocking nearly 80-odd kilometers an hour. You'd never think from those small little legs that it can propel itself that fast. So we're looking around every bush, keeping our ears and eyes open for any signs. Say, do giraffes ever eat grass? No, not by my experience. They would come down to the ground, to the lower sections where you would find grass, to pick up bones. Osteophagy, it's consuming of bone, the practice of eating bone. But eating grass, no, not really. It's a very small, mediocre morsel for a giraffe in comparison to what it can obviously consume in these higher levels of trees. And that's also where they are eliminating competition as well. When you have a height advantage, you really are higher than other browsing animals, so you do definitely have a big advantage when it comes to feeding off the trees. So coming down for grass, no. And it's a very dangerous thing. Coming down like that, you put yourself at high risk to being caught by a predator, because that's when a giraffe is most vulnerable, when it's drinking or if it is resting. So they sit down and they tuck their legs in just like a horse would or like a cow would, but their head must remain upright all the time. So, feeding on grass is just not worth the risk, and it's just not worth the energy output. So if you ever see a giraffe coming down, it's more than likely smelling something, very curious, or picking up that of a bone. Obviously, calcium is a big, important factor for them. So consuming of bone, osteophagy, obviously to help with skeletal development. So grass, no, but trees, definitely. They are pure browsing animals. Wow, beautiful. We've got a nice breeze coming from the west, just cooling us down. We're sitting in the shade of a very big and old camel thorn, watching these beautiful giraffe, the sounds of the birds around us, cool breeze, and then this fresh, very earthy smell mixed in with vegetation is quite prominent at the moment. I think this giraffe over here, David, is having a stare-off competition. See the individual behind is starting to browse there. And so once a giraffe browses on a tree like it, obviously its response is quite incredible. It can sense that it's being attacked. So altering the chemicals within the leaves, obviously remarkable to deter this browsing animal. But then as well as it releases certain compounds, one could be ethanol, that is an early warning system for trees downwind. So it's almost like a buddy out to inform the tree downwind that you should start increasing your tannin levels to deter these browsing animals. So when you find browsing animals, they tend to move, not all the time, but tend to move upwind so that they have more available time feeding on a tree before it actually responds and starts upping the levels of tannins. And tannins can really wreak havoc on the digestive system of animals. You can find animals through certain areas where you go through a drought where their tummies are full of vegetation and yet they die of starvation. And that's because of the tannins obviously not allowing the animal to absorb or extract nutrients from the matter itself. So a very, very important chemical used by trees. And the trees can even respond. So a browser, it responds in a certain manner. And then, for example, like insects, it can respond in another manner. So it can actually chop and change. It can respond to a specific attack. So that one of a hooved ungulate like this, or, for example, like I said, an insect, releasing a chemical that will attract a predator that would feed on that insect. I mean, trees are just remarkable things. A cuckoo north of us, just busy calling. Sure. And you can see they're moving almost directly due west, straight into the wind. Because the chemicals that tree's releasing now would be blowing towards us. It is so green. I can't get over how green it is. What could attack a giraffe at Tswalu? The only thing that would be able to attack a giraffe at Tswalu would be a lion. Our pack of hyena is a bit small and they really don't have the necessary skills at taking out a large hooved ungulate like this, but prides of lions, so the north or south pride that we have on Tswalu, would be able to utilize giraffe as a food source. It's obviously a very dangerous animal to hunt. If you just think about its sheer size, even when it comes to its hooves, I mean the hooves being about 15 centimeters long and can give quite a volatile blow from one of those hooves. The only animal that can kick in all directions, so it can kick backwards like a horse, and then it lashes its front hooves out to obviously a threat or a predator in front of it, so making it very dangerous. So they would have to chase the animal to where it loses its balance, so uneven terrain, to is where the animal would fall, and then they can obviously go around the airwaves, or setting it off balance by jumping on its hindquarters, obviously lashing into the hide with those strong claws, and then trying to set the animal off balance. But you'd need a few lions, 3, 4, and also the help of the big male. Obviously his weight and power is obviously needed. There's documentation of lions being very clever in the Kruger, chasing giraffe to roads that are tarred. And on the tar, obviously the animal loses its footing, and that's when the lions have the perfect opportunity. But once they've got the neck, there's no way of that animal getting away. Well, there is maybe a chance, but, lions definitely got the advantage there. It's quite a lumbersome activity getting up for a giraffe. Basher, did giraffes ever disturb birds' nests? Very intriguing question. I'm sure there's a little bit of disturbance here and there when they're browsing around, that of a white-browed sparrowweaver or maybe a Kalahari scrub robin nest. But birds can act quite aggressively. For their small size in comparison to something like a giraffe, they can be quite aggressive. Something like a fork-tailed drongo as well will not hesitate at dive bombing and mobbing a big animal like this that has come too close to its nest. So not detrimentally affecting it, but I think there'd be some disturbance, and a bird would respond in a specific manner to try and deter. Because obviously you don't want those high-priced items that you put a lot of time and attention into to being disturbed or or being hurt, yeah. But these thorny trees provide a very safe haven for birds' nests. Obviously having the big spines, you have a lot of insect activity, especially ants. You find ants actually living on these trees and can be a big helping factor for the tree. So if a giraffe like this now comes and browses on a tree, you'd find ants actually rush up and actually bite the animal around the lips, because it's the ant's home. So the giraffe, by eating on the leaves, it's actually disturbing and destroying the ant's home. So it's a mutualistic relationship that these animals have with these wonderful organisms, living in harmony, which is quite incredible. All right, for now we're going to send you off to one of our colleagues, and we'll see you in a bit.
Welcome back to and beyond Pinder Private Game Reserve. So we had to abandon our cheetah search, but we were lucky enough to have another ranger in the area, and they came across these two young lionesses. And what's quite exciting is, as you can see, their heads are up. They're breathing quite heavily, and it's just because it's been a very, very hot day. So that's their way of cooling themselves. You can see that belly rise and fall. Also have a look. She's opening her mouth now. As there's a bit of a breeze, it will sort of pass over her tongue and the inside of her cheeks, and those membranes give off heat very easily. So it's a way that they cool themselves down, panting heavily and keeping their mouths open. I'm sure you've seen, many domestic cats or dogs do the exact same. But they're showing all the promising signs that perhaps they might get up just now and move. They're not flat out. What we're hoping to see is some yawning, some grooming. But I have a feeling they might give us a bit of a show. Now, these two members here, if you have a look at these two lions, you can see that their heads aren't massive. They're still a bit small compared to the other lions that I'm sure you've been seeing on drive today. And we know that due to that they are less than 7 years old, because their heads will continue to grow till they're about 7. And then we look at other things to age them. If we look at the back lioness, you can see that she's got some spots on her back right leg. Those will fade with age, more prominently in males than females, but they age with time with females. And you can see they're still quite prominent, showing she's a bit of a younger lioness. Then we look at their faces. There's no scars. The noses are still very pink. The ears are in very good condition. And that's all showing us that they're younger lionesses. So these two have separated from the pride. Now they would do that from anywhere from about 2.5 to 3. And that's because they reach breeding age at that stage. They'll start hunting from about 2 years old, and they'll be quite efficient by about 2.5. So these two are actually just a bit over 3 years old, a little bit older than 3. But they haven't left the pride to mate at the moment. They've gone off because the pride at the moment is quite big. It's got two main lionesses, the alpha lionesses, which are older and therefore more dominant. And they each have a few cubs, a total of 5 cubs. And at Pinder, our lions don't tend to hunt bigger game. We've got much easier animals for them to prey on, like wildebeest, sometimes zebra, and sometimes even generally the smaller things like impala and yala and warthog. They'll feed on more. And you can imagine when 7 lions have already had their fill, the cubs will eat first, the mothers will eat after, and there won't be much left for these two lionesses here. So for their own benefit, they've left mountain pride for now. It's not as if they will have a fight if they come across the pride. They might even stick with them for a while. But they've decided to go off and hunt for themselves. Just that way they get to actually feed far more regularly. And what's quite interesting is they have gone into a different section of the territory than the other lions are at the moment. And I think that's just because they know if they were to make a kill close to the pride would still come in and feed. And then they would, again, be left out a little bit. So that's what these two are doing right now. Dela, you know what? It is something about that stare that seems to look right through your soul. They've got the most beautiful yellow eyes, these lions. And actually, that just now I moved around a bit in the vehicle, and the one lioness looks straight at me, and you do always get a bit of a foreboding sense. But they are stunning animals. And they seem to actually be enjoying the fact that the sun's going down now. They've got this lovely breeze going over them. You can actually see, since we've been watching, it almost looks like their breathing's slowing down a little bit. It's starting to get nice and cool now. You can imagine how comfortable they are. They've got such a lovely sandy road, which I'm sure is really soft on their skin. They've got this lovely breeze. They're not particularly hungry. If we're looking at that one at the back, you can see that the belly's still protruding a little bit. I wouldn't say they're very full because it's starting to go a little bit concave towards the hips. But they're certainly not starving. With lions being opportunistic hunters, they don't have to wait until they're hungry to go and hunt like a cheetah generally would. In fact, even while they're lying here, if they were to smell some sort of animal in one of these thickets, or even pick their heads up and see one crossing up ahead, they might even take that opportunity to try and hunt. And in fact, it doesn't matter how full a lion is. If they see a warthog, which I think is their favorite food, they will almost certainly try and hunt it every time. What's so sweet, I'm just having a look at this one in the front. As she exhales, you can see little patches of sand being blown out. She's just moved. See how big those paws are. Really big, impressive paws. It's quite nice. We can see the difference between the front and the back. So if we have a look at the front, quite a bit bigger than the paws at the back. And that's the same with lion and leopard. And it's because they need, to have a bit more power in the front. They've got really heavy heads, so they have a bit more weight in the front of their bodies. When they go in for the kill, they'll often use those front arms more than their back legs, to grip onto animals, to try and pull them down. So they've got bigger front paws. It's the opposite with cheetah, who actually have bigger back pads, and it's because their main weapon is speed rather than strength. And so they need bigger back pads because they need to push off of their back feet as they run. So it's one of the little differences next time you're having a look at lion tracks. Know that the bigger one's always the front foot. I do love lion, I have to admit, and I always find it exciting to be with lion, especially when they're moving. A lion walking around is always, you never know what you're going to see because they are such opportunistic hunters. So if you're ever looking for like an exciting sort of afternoon and you know that there's a good chance that the lions are going to get up and move, I always recommend trying to look for them. In terms of one of my favorite animals, they're certainly up there. I can't say that they're at the top of my list.
And my mom is going to be upset by that because I think her favorite animal is a lion. But probably at the top of my list has always been elephant. I find them absolutely unbelievable. And yeah, I can just spend a whole afternoon sitting around elephant and watching their behavior and not get bored in the slightest. So certainly up there, but maybe not my favorite ones. What is always interesting to note about lions, though, is if you can see that they just are so aware that they are at the top of the food chain. You can see these two, even though they're younger lionesses, like nothing's disturbed them. When they rest, their eyes are shut. They are actually very alert still. You can see those ears flicking every now and then. That's just flicking for flies. But they've got incredible hearing. Those hairs that we can see sticking out actually funnel sound down. And it's such an unbelievable hearing to the point that we can't even believe. We wouldn't be able to sort of imagine how good their hearing is. And so if you ever hear, if something walks past and maybe breaks a branch or rustles some leaves, they'll be up straight away. So they are quite alert even when they're resting like this. But you can see that they're not very fazed about anything that could come along and be like a potential threat for them. It's quite interesting about the lioness at the back. If we zoom in a little bit, you can see that there's some scars there. So I think that might be from a few fights with the other lionesses over kills. Possibly after one of those fights is what led them to just sort of separate from the pride. So I think what we will do is we're going to stay with them for a little bit. They don't show any signs of movement right now, but I'm hoping as it gets cooler, they might get up and maybe try and hunt. So we're going to stick with them, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Welcome back, welcome back. A lovely sable bull has decided to join us on this very grassy green patch. Looks like you can't see what he's doing. is chomping away. So he's got a funny horn there as well. That's more than likely happened when he was a bit younger, when his horns were still developing. In the early stages, they can be pushed around and damaged, rubbing it in trees or fighting with an opponent, and that's where that horn might have been damaged through his younger years and has now grown so skew. It actually looks like a unicorn. Oh, this bird's getting close, David. We've got an African cuckoo calling behind us. It's a lifer for me as well. It's not too far. It actually sounds like it has come closer to us, which would be really nice if we could get a view of that bird. Oh, taking a little lie down. But what a magnificent animal. You can have deformities and variations in horns like that, especially from inbreeding, which is obviously not happening on Tswalu. When you have males breeding within the same group over and over and over, you start depleting the genetic value of the animal. And that's when you can have funny horn development like that there. But that is definitely from his younger years where that horn got damaged. He would be at a slight disadvantage when it comes to male-and-male competition. Maybe the ladies like him better. Looks different. That's what I want to believe. So what we were doing is we just repositioned from looking at that beautiful sable to this magnificent structure here on our left, where we were getting a bit of shade from a few minutes ago. I mean, just the shape of this structure here, the skeleton of an old camel thorn is just so beautiful. And so we've looked at these trees. They are very long-lived trees. They live hundreds of years old, or they can reach hundreds of years. And this is where this tree would have experienced a very, very dry period within Tswalu, or its roots not getting down deep enough, maybe obstruction like rocks. Obviously eliminating from tapping into this underground stored water, tabletop. Obviously, if you think about the porous value of the soil here, water doesn't sit on the soil for very long. So once we have big rains, that water just drops into the soil. And a couple of centimeters, you can dig a couple of centimeters and you'll find the moisture around the soil being quite high. And these larger trees like this with these extensive tap roots are able then to tap into this water that's stored there for longer periods of time. But then if you go through a few years, if you look at climate over a long period, you'll have dry and wet seasons. And it's where this tree would have experienced a dry season, or multiple at that, and where it just didn't get enough and unfortunately died. But its skeleton still will remain now for a good period thereafter. Not only good to look at, but you could find a lot of animals seeking refuge, from insects and reptiles, birds, all seeking refuge or making homes within this beautiful structure. Afternoon is starting to taper down, starting to get a bit cooler. I know that because David's getting closer towards me for a bit of warmth. I wish. It's beautiful on the right hand side. Let's take a look at those white sparrow weavers. Lovely structures. And beautifully positioned on the western side, obviously to catch that late afternoon sunlight, just to warm up those nests. So it's one of many, many, many colonies that we would have through Tswalu, and Tswalu's been doing amazing research on these birds. And we've uncovered some tantalizing things about them. How they disperse, their breeding behavior, their song, courtship. Very unique birds, and this specific colony will be territorial, vigorously territorial, around a certain circumference around this tree for obviously the resources. So as a group, they'll actively defend, but then very uniquely, only one pair within this group will actively breed. The alpha male and female, which would be the larger individuals out of this group. Ouch, you just stung me, little wasp. Which would be the larger individuals out of this group. Hear the chattering of the starlings in the distance. And that ring-necked dove busy calling out their Botswana. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. But yeah, using fairly thickish parts of grass to create those wonderful nests, and very easy to recognize them from their very messy appearance. When it comes to birds and them making nests, they can be very meticulous, making sure that the nest is as neat as possible, especially if you go into other species of weaver like southern masked weaver or lesser weaver. They're very meticulous when it comes to tidiness. Whereas these guys really don't mind a bit of a messy structure, as long as it's secure enough to support the female and as well as the chicks. That's what they are. That's what they are. Oh, they're after. Oh, Sable's moving along, eh? So these bulls that you find here in Tswalu, these sable bulls, are territorial. So obviously having a territory is a very efficient way on how you're ensuring your safety. Because if you are being territorial, that means you are protecting valuable resources found within this area. So having availability like that ensures the safety and also your strength through the leaner times. Some animals are very territorial and some animals don't display any territorial behavior whatsoever. They'll just have a home range that they'll move through. But these guys, the sable, are territorial, and obviously... But there's a mongoose behind us, Dad. Oh no, he's gone, sorry, he's gone. So of the resources, obviously very, very important, but then also access to females. Any protection? My left and right bicep, 2 guns on board all the time. If we're counting David's, 4 guns all the time. When we are on safari, we do carry a form of protection. That is in case the unlikely event that things really go bad, but you never ever want that as a guide. It's obviously your worst nightmare. But when we do a general bushwalk, obviously very important, safety. That is number one. No matter what you do, if it's out here in the bush or in a factory or just walking in the street, safety. So if we do a general bushwalk, then my weapon will come with me, obviously, just as an extra form of protection. But you would do everything in your power never to use a weapon. We train as if we do not have a weapon. So you walk in the bush with the greatest and utmost respect for everything. Because when you're on foot out here, or even in the vehicle, you really understand we are small and insignificant in comparison to everything around here. Especially if you have the luxury of getting up close and personal with elephants. You'd find out very quickly that you are very, very small. But walking through this stuff over here and being on foot is a very special thing. Being on that over there and really getting down and dirty and exploring all the little wonders of this magical land. So we're just scanning around, see David's moving around. We're just scanning around for any predators coming to this area. We've got the springbuck moving slightly southwest, and we're just scanning in between all this undergrowth to see if anything's sneaking up here. It's a brilliant place for a predator to launch an attack. Obviously cover and getting as close as possible is very, very important to be successful. I mean, cheetah that need to get within 40 meters. I would like to see an average human getting within 40 meters of an antelope. Their senses are finely tuned into this amazing landscape. The shadows casting long copies of the trees. Just long shadows. It looks like lush kikuyu grass that you would find on front of somebody's lawn. It's so green. And that's my favorite color, so I'm in awe right now with this color around us. But hopefully we are on track for a wet season. So if you look at the annual rainfall of Tswalu, if you look at it a year, it's only about 400 mils per annum, which is tiny in comparison to most places. So already we've had 2 or 3 good spells of about 30 odd millimeters, which is great just to kickstart the growth. If you look at the growth of trees, and especially grass, you need, especially for the savanna biome which we are in, you need short increments of rain throughout the season. So then what you're having is that you're having rain and you're having large growth, and then after the growth period you have flowering and then seeding. And grass and especially trees need time in order to reach maximum growth, and that obviously feeds everything. Primary production out here is vital in how everything sustains itself. Without these green items around us, nothing works, nothing gets driven. So you think about insects, you think about hoofed ungulates, they eat the primary production and they become food in turn for higher up on the food chain, species high up on the food chain. Yeah, that cuckoo has come closer. And a very beautiful bird, and something that I obviously really want to see. So I can just hear it calling in the distance, and I'm just going to whip out my book quickly to show you who is calling. So when it comes to birds, I will go to great lengths to go and find it. So the call, and if you look at bird calls obviously a very important tool for guides in order to find birds, especially recognition. Some species can become quite tricky to ID, and using calls is a very efficient tool for me to find and then ID birds, if I can find it in the book first. There we go. All right, so if you look at cuckoos, a very diverse family, and if you think about these birds, it's quite remarkable in where they find a suitable nest site. So you'll find some of these species have multiple hosts. Some have one host, that is it. And it's coming even closer. So the bird that's making the call at the background is this guy over here, African cuckoo. And you'll find that this individual will actually go and search of a specific nest, being that of an African cuckoo. And what it does is it actually actively lays its egg within the nest of the host and then flies away. And it's very, very efficient, so that you don't have to expend any time and energy in creating this beautiful structure and then concealing the nest first and foremost, protecting it. So if you can just lay your egg and go, it's efficient so that you can carry on doing what you're doing, or what you need to do, sorry.
Welcome back. Sorry about that. Seems that there's been some difficulties with Tswalu's signal, but as you know, we out in the African wild, and these things do happen. Luckily, we've still got our lions that are quite sleeping very soundly right in front of us. So actually, it's almost as if they heard me saying, oh, let's hope that they get up, and they're showing all the right signs, and then they did the exact opposite and decided to have a little cat nap, as one would say. It's so sweet, you know, the way they posed. If you ever look at the one in the front with her paws right underneath her chin, they just look so sort of serene and completely harmless in this picture. But believe me, they are not. And anyone who's ever come across lion on foot know exactly how intimidating they can be when they growl. Actually, they've got such a deep, and I think even if you've never ever heard that growl before, the second you hear it, you go, that's lion. So they certainly aren't as harmless as they look. It's quite lovely to see the contrast, but that does blend in really well with sort of dried out grass. And then you can have a look at the one at the back. You can see it's quite light by the belly and by the legs, and that's often what we spot when we're looking for lion. You know, if they're lying on their sides, the belly sort of gives them away. It's the most prominent feature that we look out for. So whenever you're on the hunt for lions, looking out for them and trying to spot them on your safari, you always try and find that little bit of something that shines a little bit too light, you know, stands out from the grass. And that's often the bellies of these lions. as it's starting to cool down, we're starting to have a few more birds calling around us. A few of the insects starting as well. I think I even hear some frogs in the distance. There's probably some puddles of water left over from our last rains. It'll be interesting to actually find out what happens tomorrow with these two lionesses. Because I imagine that they've actually become quite efficient hunters. You know, they've been away from the pride for a matter of months already. You know, they've separated ever since those cubs really started to grow up and feed quite a bit. It was almost an instant separation. And, you know, from probably relying more on the older lionesses to take the lead in hunts, they would have had to develop that skill to the point where they're now completely self-sufficient. And it would really be interesting to see their hunting styles and techniques, if they've learnt to hunt as a group together, or if they're still more sort of pick an animal by themselves and go for it that way. I imagine that it would sort of more be determined by the situation itself. You know, these techniques are quite instinctual, and also they do start learning from observing the other lionesses in the pride from very, very young. It's actually quite sweet. Often the cubs do come along for the hunts and are told to sort of stay off to the side. They don't always listen, and they end up ruining them more often than not. But I think they would have learned all those techniques and probably just employ them as and when needed. So we're starting to lose the light, but we might stick around for another little bit, and hopefully they get up and move. But we're going to send you to another live location.
Oh, that sounds like a good idea. Now will be the time that they'll start to move about and some interesting things can happen. So I've got the spotlight out, as you can see, and I'm looking for any eyes in the darkness. Now the light will reflect from the tapetum lucidum, which is a layer of cells at the back of the retina that allows the animal, whichever animal, to see better in the dark, and allows me to see them. I'd love to see an owl, or some owls, pearl-spotted owlet. I haven't seen a pearl-spotted owlet in such a long time. There's an eerie feel to the evening tonight. I quite like it. Hopefully that means that we'll get some sort of special sighting. You can always have your hopes up. I always do. I certainly do. Every evening. Mrs. Lapwing, you'd like to know if we get resurrection flowers in South Africa. I must admit to you, Mrs. Lapwing, that I misheard that question at first, but I'll let you think about the rest. Do we get resurrection flowers in South Africa? I don't know about resurrection flowers, but we do get resurrection plants in certain desert areas of southern Africa, at least. But I'm not sure about South Africa. There's a scrub hare here. Will we be able to see our scrub hare? Hello, Scrubby. It looks a little bit nervous. I think it's also feeling the eerie chill of this evening. Only in an atmospheric sense, because it certainly isn't chilly from a temperature perspective. Look at those wide eyes. Large, large pupils. This is what I'd be looking at when I have my spotlight out. Those large pupils would look like bright dots shining back at me. You can see the blood vessels in the ears very close to the thin skin, so it can transfer heat, dissipate heat very quickly. Important when you're jumping around in a high energy animal in Africa. Oh, it's flexing for us. Oh no, just readjusting. I think this is a good sign. Remember the time when we used to collect how many scrub hairs we could put on camera before the end of drive? We should try that, although I have no competitor. But usually I find a chameleon when I find scrub hairs. So I hope that will be the case. Shame, it looks so nervous. But it's so well hidden. Hi, Mariline. You'd like to know if there's a chance of seeing bush babies in the trees? Absolutely. The difficulty comes with putting them on camera because they move so quickly and they jump so quickly. But we could definitely see them. Around our rooms at camp, that's where I've had my best bush baby sighting. One jumped right onto the tree in front of my room, right in front of my face, and stared at me, and I stared at it. We were sitting outside, and then James comes out with his guitar, and he starts playing to the bush baby. The bush baby promptly jumped away. And he said maybe he doesn't like music. And then he went back inside his room. We have great fun at camp, clearly. Scrub hairs also come past. Had a wonderful civet sighting sitting on my stoep as well. Really nice nocturnal creatures that we don't get to see because we don't stay out that late and don't spend enough time in the darkness to be able to invest in driving enough roads and, exploring enough space to be able to see them. So a lot of the time our best nocturnal creature sightings are at camp or outside our rooms. Oh, look at that. Good clean. Sure you can hear the rain starting to fall again. Wonderful sounds. Starlings, crickets, cicadas, frogs. It's the evening chorus. Let us move on from our scrub here. It's getting a little dark to view it in all its glory. And the next step, of course, being counting more scrub hairs that I can find. Or that elusive chameleon. It's just not been my chameleon week, has it? I have good luck with them on Twin Dams Road, I think. And I'm on Twin Dams Road. But these things change. You tend to find it, or look for a pattern. Oh, I've always seen them here, so they must be here. But in fact, they could be anywhere. And given today's underwhelming weather for a chameleon, perhaps they're all at the bottom of the shrubs. Counting stars, that's an interesting question. You'd like to know if animals can be born with a cognitive impairment like humans can. I'm sure they could. I mean, I don't know because it's a difficult thing to measure. We come down to that again because it's easy to comment on it, but can we actually measure it? Like emotion and things like that. So I'm sure there is, and I'm sure that they can be born that way because there are certain things that are quite standard when it comes to mammals or animals, but mostly we want to talk about certain groups, so let's just talk about mammals. For example, 2 forelimbs and 2 hind limbs, having a head, a body plan. That's quite a standard thing. Why should anything have to have the same body plan? Anyway, nervous system and things like that, those also cover a similar standard across mammals. So if we as a mammal can have a cognitive impairment, whether that is something that is genetic, whether it is something that is developmental, because a lot of that happens during the development of a fetus, I'm quite sure that animals can or mammals can experience the same. When it comes to genetics, though, it can be different because we don't share a large part of genetic code with lots of mammals. There's only a few that we share a really strong amount of our code with. Hear the woodland kingfisher. Puff adder. Wow. It's been some time since I last saw one of those. Can you see it slowly moving? Polar spotted owlet calling in the background too. Look at it. These snakes still give me a bit of a although I love them and I'll touch them, but when I see them they still give me a bit of a feeling, you know. So cool to watch it. You can see it's also got the eye shine I was telling you about. Donna, you'd like to know how many types of snakes do we get in Djuma? Lots of different types we get. Oh, the ones I've seen, boomslang, black mamba, Mozambican spitting cobra, puff adders, brown house snake, western yellow-bellied sand snake, and I'm sure more python. the spotted bush snake. That's the one. And I'm sure plenty more. Oh, blind snake. There was one in camp the other day. Oh, eastern tiger snake. That was one in the bathroom. I guess once you think about it, then I've actually seen quite a few. There it goes, fading into the darkness with its like linear motion. See how it moves like a caterpillar? I think it moves like a caterpillar. I'm gonna let it be on its way, and we'll keep on moving too. Unbelievable that you all just got to watch a puff adder. It's so wonderful to see those snakes. I do find them really beautiful. We've been sitting with these lion, and as you can see, the one is starting to show a little bit of life. What actually perked her interest was there was a hyena calling off to our left, spotted hyena. And she sort of raised her head to listen a little bit closer. Lions being, they can actually steal kills away from a hyena, ironically. More often the other way, it's the opposite way. So they've got to be alert for hyenas, because if they do make a kill, and a clan of hyenas is able to steal the kill away from them, depending on the size of the clan of the hyenas and the size of the pride of lions. The general rule of thumb is that per lioness they need about 3 hyenas to chase them off a kill. So they would need about 6 for this group, but they're quite young and experienced lionesses, so I think they could get away with quite a few less. And also what we've seen the hyenas do at Pindo, which is quite interesting, is that we have very small clans of hyena here, so they actually do hunt more than scavenge, because they very seldom have the numbers to actually, sort of scavenge a kill. But when they do, we've noticed that they often hide just out of view, and then they do that whooping call, but they change the tone of their call, and they keep sort of whooping and changing the tone. So it sounds like there's a lot more hyenas than there actually is, and they've been able to intimidate lions off of kills by doing that. The lions feel that there's this huge clan of hyenas coming towards them from behind the thickets, and actually get intimidated off the kill by them doing that, which is quite an interesting sort of method that they use. You can see that she's not too concerned about the hyena being close, because there's really nothing that the hyena will do for them or to them at the moment, because they don't have a kill. So, there's no competition between them and the hyena. It's amazing. You can see that they are still really peaceful. Tankat, the more time you spend with lions, the more similarities you actually do see with your domestic cats. I mean, so many so that the behavior is almost identical, from the looks they give you to the way they lie down, even to the way they go into their stalking position. If you've ever seen your cats stalk a mouse or something, very, very similar, and that quick change of behavior as well. And even the greetings. I don't know if any of our viewers have any of their cats that used to headbutt them. I had a wonderful ginger cat growing up that used to show me affection by coming in and giving me a little headbutt and a little head rub. And that's something that you see quite often with prides of lion. One of the ways that they initiate contact is through that headbutt and head rub.
which is really sweet. In fact, even now you can see these two lionesses aren't far away from each other, and that closeness is another way that they keep those bonds really secure. You know, you'll see any animals that rely quite heavily on another, you often see them initiate contact like that, or when they sleep, they lie very close together, you know, often touching. You see it with prides of lion, you'll see it with packs of wild dogs, and you see it with a lot of mothers and their cubs, and that's just keeping that bond strong. You can hear that crested guinea fowl starting to call off, crested francolin starting to call off to our right. And that's one of my favorite sounds of the evening. Often, you know, just after the sun sets, you'll start hearing that call. You can also hear the cicadas. We listen closely there. Quite an interesting way that they make that noise. They actually have an empty cavity and then manage to constrict their muscles around that cavity, creating a vibration which creates this noise. And some of them can be unbelievably loud. You hear the red-chested cuckoo as well going, pick my fro, pick my fro. This lioness is just opening eye watching me as soon as I whistled there. If you have a look on those eyes, you can actually see that there's a bit of white fur right underneath them. And that's an adaptation to help them hunt at night. It reflects a bit more light into their eyes. Lions actually have fantastic eyesight. They say they can see 6 times better than humans can, which is quite something. You know, if you can imagine using your binoculars, I suppose that's sort of the vision that they have most of the time. Maybe not such a zoomed in, but a very crystal clear image. And that's because they have a lot more rods than cones, which are much more receptive to light, especially at night. So incredible vision when it comes to the evening, and that's why we can see that they're not doing much. Zay, thank you for your question. That's quite interesting. So the male lions do have manes around their necks, and that's to protect their necks when they have a territorial battle. So because the male lions will actually go for the neck and try and grab onto that neck quite quickly. Quite quickly. How am I going to say that? Yeah, it's the most vulnerable part. So it's a protection. And it's a really good question as to why other cats don't have those manes. And while I'm thinking about it, it must be due to sort of the social dynamic of lions that differ. Because if we think about tigers and leopards, you know, they hunt by themselves. They'll have a territory, and they have only themselves to rely on for their hunting, and they're very reliant on their camouflage when it comes to hunting. You know, the leopard and tiger have amazing camouflage in those sort of thicker areas, and you can imagine that mane would really break that camouflage and affect their hunting quite significantly, which is very different with lion. You know, males, while they can hunt by themselves, the females do tend to do more of the hunting because they are actually better camouflaged, and it's easy for males to steal kills from them. So the males can actually afford to have a bit of a break in camouflage because the lionesses will do most of the hunting, and also they will be able to, so they'll be able to feed from the kills that the lionesses make more often, and it doesn't affect their hunting to that much of an extent, just because of the difference in social dynamic. So I think that's the main difference, is they're less reliant on their camouflage than the other cats, and therefore can sort of afford to have that little added protection. I'm just looking at the sky up ahead. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there because I saw a bolt of lightning, and that's really exciting. One of the best things about this time of year is that we get these beautiful thunderstorms. In fact, you can actually see that one lioness has picked up her head. I don't know if she heard something else or if it was more the storm that's also caught her attention. But I'm really hoping we get a massive thunderstorm rolling in, because there's nothing quite like it. An African thunderstorm late at night. You know, there's all these claps of lightning and thunder, and especially in the African wild, it's just one of my favorite things. Now, we're losing the white light quite rapidly, and I think these lionesses, what they're doing is they're waiting for it to actually get quite a bit darker, because that's when they're going to have their best chance of hunting. It's when they can use their eyesight to their best advantage, and then they can also, be a bit more hidden from prey. So we're going to leave them, and we're going to head back to the lodge before we get caught in this thunderstorm, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.
That is an excellent plan. We've also seen some lightning in the distance, and we're also hoping that a big storm rolls in. And then tomorrow, the bush will be alive with giant land snails and millipedes. Oh, I was meant to tell you that yesterday I found a whole lot of alates in my hair and clothing and car, but they're out, or at least some of them are. Alates are the reproductive caste of termites. I see a little spider, but I don't think you will be able to see it in this darkness. So that reproductive caste, it goes out. It's the only one born with the wings, so it can fly. And that's why those wings are quite flimsy. They've been flying all about, and they're a massive food source for all the animals out here, big, small, all of them. You may even find a lion sitting at a termite mound, having some termites. Daya, you would like to know if snakes explode if they eat too much. I guess amongst themselves they might say, oh, I'm exploding. But no, they do not combust when they eat too much. What does happen when they eat too much, however, is the whole digestive process gets massively slowed down. So you know that snakes are reptiles, which means that in order for their metabolism to operate efficiently, they need to be at a good temperature. Now, if they eat too much, a similar thing can happen as when it's maybe too cold to digest their food. So the metabolic process slows down so much because so much energy is being used to digest that they can actually have to vomit up partially digested food, which I'm sure is not a pretty sight. They'll get very, very sluggish. Already when they eat, they are very sluggish. When they overeat, the whole metabolic system gets thrown off. Let it also be said that it's very difficult for a snake to overeat unless it's being overfed by a person who keeps a snake as a pet, because out in the wild, they are not getting regularly fed, and their body is adjusted to a wild lifestyle, not a lifestyle where they are expecting food several times in the day. I see all our herbivores on that side of quarantine, so let's go over on that side. Overeating or an animal being obese and things like that is not something that's common, because it's our lifestyle that creates that situation. And other animals besides us have not created such a lifestyle. Saw something running across the ground, something small. Could have been a stray mongoose or stray squirrel. Stuck in bed, you'd like to know what I'm excited to see tomorrow? Just excited to see things. Doesn't have to be anything in particular. Stuck in bed, I like all things. Although I feel like I've been missing out on pearl-spotted owlets. I've been thinking about them today. Or barred owlets. Giant African land snails, I really want to see some of them. I haven't seen too many bats. We saw one fly over us. But I'd like to see some bats. Those elephants that we had at Chitwa Dam, that we're having a really good time. I want to have more of those sightings. I need to see a chameleon. This week's not going to go very well if I don't spot at least one. What would you like to see tomorrow, Stuck in Bed? I'd love to see a bush baby. Oh, you know what? Let's just throw a porcupine on there for the evening if I'm out. Whole lot of things. I'm sure all of you, the more you experience these safaris and you grow your appreciation and knowledge for all things wild and natural, then you find everything fascinating and wonderful. Alas, I think I may be dethroned from the one who knows chameleons to the one who only knows how to use spotlight to search for them. It is so cloudy, I can't even show you any of the lovely stars. I'm sure they are lovely, but I can't see them. Nothing. Nothing. Here, I'll show you this wild dhaka, which to me looks like an asteroid. Look at it. Pew, pew, pew. It's all dried up now. Well, that's our stargazing for tonight, and that's the end of the show. So thank you for your questions and your comments, guys. We'll see you in the morning.